And we're going to talk humanism now because a humanist has become the first full-time head chaplain in the history of the NHS. She's pastoral carer Lindsay van Dijk, and she'll be leading priests from the Church of England, Baptist and evangelical denominations, and also 24 volunteers from a range of faiths at Buckinghamshire Healthcare NHS Trust. And we can speak to her now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you here. Now, listen, let's start off. What is a humanist?
So usually humanists accept that the current life that we live is our only life. So we don't so much bother about an afterlife or thinking that there's something after we pass away. And therefore, we have to make meaning and purpose for ourselves in the one life that we have. We usually gain specific inspiration from our lives or art or culture or rich natural world. But it's mostly about making meaning at this moment in time where we lead our lives and to connect with other fellow human beings.
And you're originally from the Netherlands, aren't you?
I am. I'm actually calling you from the Netherlands as we speak.
where, you know, secularism is pretty strong, isn't it?
It is. And actually, humanist pastoral carers have already been quite familiar here in the Netherlands. They already had humanist pastoral care since the 1950s. So you can see there's quite a difference there, of course, with the UK, where it's still developing, but developing really fast. And that's brilliant news.
How did you get into it then? How did you become a humanist pastor?
Well, humanist pastoral care was something that I actually delved into when I got acquainted with the University for Humanistic Studies. And I was very interested about how we all connect to one another, how we give meaning to our lives that we lead, and what kind of values we hold. And specifically because I wasn't raised with an organized religion or a faith, I always was concerned about morality, values, beliefs, and philosophical questions of life. And that's actually how I stumbled onto this course and have done a bachelor's and a master's and are doing still doctoral course as well within humanist pastoral care. It's absolutely my passion.
And how did you go from that, from studying it, to being fascinated by it, to ending up being a chaplain at a hospital?
Well, I've done different kinds of things actually throughout my career. So I also was part of the humanist community at Harvard, where I wanted to do a broad experience of humanist pastoral care there. And then actually I still wanted some more adventure, and I applied for a role in London, moved about 3.5 years ago and got heavily involved with Humanist UK. Was very intrigued about how brilliantly they set up the humanist pastoral care service there, and really wanted to put my 2 cents in as well. And well, within the 3.5 years I've been here, I'm really pleased and humbled by this appointment as the managing chaplain of a huge trust.
And I guess we shouldn't be surprised, because we know that just over half the UK population now don't have an organised faith, but may still want that spiritual support. So what kind of support do you give people in the hospital setting?
It's mostly about providing that listening ear. It's indeed, as you say, that spiritual and emotional support when people request that. It could be in times of need, but also sometimes to celebrate something that they have enjoyed themselves and want to share their happiness in. So it depends on case by case, but mostly actually is just being there for that individual and to make sense of what's happening to them. It's walking alongside that narrative of that somebody is sharing with you and just being fully present.
And how does a humanist, how do you sit alongside your leading priests from the Church of England, Baptist, evangelical denominations? Your two worlds collide. You don't have a shared belief. How has it gone down with them?
It's actually not colliding at all. 80% of the service that we provide within our multi-faith and belief team at the Trust is just pastoral, in the sense that it doesn't revolve specifically around rituals with faith or belief. It's providing that emotional and spiritual support of people trying to make sense of their illnesses or how that will affect them, their identity or their beloved ones around them. It's only when somebody specifically requests somebody of their faith or belief that we can additionally provide that. The 80% is not specifically that. It's just pastoral.
That's interesting, because you often think people in very desperate situations in hospital, and even people who haven't been religious their whole lives, if they or a family member is facing the end, they might want to believe there's something more. What kind of interactions have you had with people?
Different interactions. So as we all respond to all patients within our trust, as well as carers, relatives and staff members, they can be of any kind of belief or faith. So for instance, I've also supported somebody of Christian background, but then that was specifically providing a listening ear and somebody that really wanted to talk about what the illness meant to her and how that will affect her life. then sometimes people do request specifically prayer, and I refer onwards to my fellow colleagues for them to actually pick that up with that specific individual as we provide person-centered care. But same has happened from the other chaplains within my team, where they do refer onwards to me if somebody is not religious and actually just wants to have that like-minded person sitting next to their bedside.
So is that what you do? You don't get onto the tricky subject of is there or isn't there a God until you know where that person is coming from, and then you can direct them to the person they need to speak to?
It's mostly indeed about speaking, what does this mean to you? And if somebody really wants to speak about an afterlife, of course, they can speak to me about that, of course, as well. But if it comes to specifically the rituals such as praying, I don't feel authentic in providing prayer, as that's not part of my belief. I would be happy to sit alongside the bed if somebody prays, and of course to offer that moment of silence, and then refer onwards to somebody who can actually provide a specific ritual. And similar in the other scenario, when somebody is not religious and doesn't really want prayer, but just somebody who's there and can talk about those themes that have arisen for them in hospital, they refer onwards to me.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that going to be quite devastating for people if you are there and they want to talk about God and a set of beliefs that they have and you don't share them? What do you say?
That's not so much what I've encountered, actually, that it's devastating. Most people are very open to the idea to just be there and to listen and to actually get that emotional and spiritual support. Haven't come across anybody that's devastated, but very pleased about how well we work together within a multi-faith team, and to refer onwards to anybody who specifically has a request. So it's commonly known that anybody can actually visit any patient, any staff member, any relative with a pastoral background.
I've got a text here from Anne who says this: joining the spiritual club is not what humanists should be doing, putting on the clothing of a priest and playing chaplain. I don't need a black-garbed priest in my hospital. I need a decent doctor. I don't want a humanist, black-garbed pseudo-priest taking their place either. Humanism has lost its way. Pretending to be a religion is not the right path. What do you say to that, Lindsay?
I believe that everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But what we do know from statistics as well, conducted by Humanist UK and YouGov, is that most people that do not have a specific faith do want to have that emotional and spiritual support in times of need. Over 70% actually require that specifically. So it is very important that it's an equality, that it's based on equality, that anybody, regardless of their faith, belief, or non-belief, can access this service. Because people that don't specifically have a faith also are entitled to get that spiritual support if they request that.
How do you define spirituality then if you don't believe in any God?
Spirituality can, of course, be very broad, but it's not reserved to just people of faith. I specifically define it, as well as along with Humanist UK, is that it's something that takes us outside of our everyday existence. It's an experience which you can become wholly absorbed in, such as, for instance, meditation, or a deeply affecting piece of music, or a moment where you have a very beautiful human connection. In essence, actually, spirituality is that facilitates human flourishing.
So how should we, if we were to think along a humanist lines for the rest of today, what should we do? How can we begin?
Begin with what specifically?
Begin with the humanist ideology. If somebody wants to sort of just start thinking along those lines, what's the first step?
The first step is to accept that we're all human beings. We all have our limitations in life. We all falter. But primarily, we all want to make the best life out of our life that we have. And that is primarily what we need to do, to live a meaningful, purposeful and moral life and leave a good legacy behind.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Pastoral carer Lindsay van Dijk. She is a humanist and has become the first full-time head chaplain in the history of the NHS, as she is at the Buckinghamshire Healthcare NHS Trust.